Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, I'm going to talk a lot of local sports with you. The New Orleans Saints and New Orleans Pelicans will also touch on some college sports, and as always, we've got a great panel for you. Renee Nato of Fox Sports New Orleans joins us on the program, and also Rick Gailey of SportsNola.com and WGSO Radio. And gentlemen, thanks for coming down. Always appreciate you guys being part of the program. And as we always do, we like to start off kind of giving the audience a little bit of a insight to what you guys are involved in. And Rick, we'll start with you. Tell the folks a little bit about what you're doing now that you're no longer coaching and involved in that aspect anymore.
Exactly. I appreciate you having me this evening, Eric. Writing for SportsNola.com, as you mentioned, with blogs especially about analyzing football and organizations, human performance in particular, so it's a pretty wide range. Also working with WGSO Radio, a station that you're intimately aware of, especially Saturday morning. The Three Tailgaters show, working with true professionals, Ken Trahan and Ed Daniels, for 2 hours on Saturday morning. So really enjoying that a great deal.
I said the last time you were on, and I'll reiterate it. He does a great job on the radio. It's been a great addition to that show, the longest running sports radio show in New Orleans. You got to check out the Three Tailgaters, 10 a.m. each and every Saturday morning on WGSO. My good friend Renee Nato. Renee, I saved you for last because you've always got a long list of everything you're involved in. Tell us a little bit about it.
I do a lot of things, but none of them well. I write with my good buddy Rick on SportsNola.com. Work for some radio stations in New York, WFAN, CBS Radio, and Sirius Radio. Just finished a recruiting show with Ro Brown that we ran from September until February, 1 hour show every week. And
that was on WHNO TV?
WHNO TV, yes, Channel 20. And do some games, some high school games on Fox New Orleans, some games on ESPN. And of course, up until the past year, I did Tigervich, which I'm going to miss, but maybe some opportunity to do some things with the SEC Network. Yes. And we'll kind of wait and see when, so kind of a few part-time jobs.
I'm excited about the SEC Network. I'd be more excited if DirecTV would make sure it's on their channel tier. I'm waiting on I'm anticipating that right now, you know, especially with the football season just a few months away. Guys, let's start off with the New Orleans Saints. A lot's been happening over the last couple of weeks. It was quiet a little bit last week, but really kind of started jumping again this week. The latest news is Raphael Bush, who signed a $1.4 million, who has not signed, pardon me, who was offered a $1.4 million offer sheet. He's a restricted free agent, has now received an offer sheet from the Atlanta Falcons. The Saints have until next Tuesday to be able to match that offer sheet. Some are saying it's somewhere around $2.2 million, which ironically is exactly what the Saints have left under the salary cap right now. Now, both you guys know Saints have a contingency plan to be able to reach out to one of their veteran guys, maybe rework a deal if necessary. I guess the big question is, do you anticipate Bush coming back with this team? I thought he played very well for this team last year.
And the Saints think a lot of him. They thought a lot of him early in the year at the end of training camp. So he's become an important cog in this whole operation, especially moving on from Malcolm Jenkins and Roman Harper, because in the Saints scheme of defense, and Rob Ryan's done a masterful job of handling the personnel and putting together a defense. The safeties do more than just play deep or run up and tackle or run. Their whole sub-packages, as it's called, the nickel and dime type of looks, are not manned by corners, but they're manned by safeties. And so somebody like a Raphael Bush becomes important, with Kenny Vaccaro coming off of his broken ankle, Jairus Byrd coming from Buffalo. That gives them three solid safeties that they absolutely need to have. They just signed a new player, Marcus Ball, from the Canadian Football League. It'll be interesting to see how he fits in. They're looking at Champ Bailey. They had him in this week. Champ Bailey cannot play corner anymore, so don't anybody that calls him a corner right now, that's erroneous. He would be taking the place, in my mind, of Roman Harper and become a sub package. And sub packages now are 70 to 80% of what a defense does now. They're very seldom in base defense. So safeties for the Saints are very important, and Raphael Bush is going to be an important part of that.
And we're going to get back to Champ Bailey in a couple minutes, as well as Marcus Ball. What's your take? The Saints didn't, when they tendered Raphael Bush, they tendered him in such a way they don't get compensation, which again, it's a no-lose situation for any team out there that wants to sign him. Of course, the Falcons get to weaken the Saints if they can sign a guy like that.
Right.
They lost Thomas Decoux, so again, they're looking for a safety. Your thoughts?
Kind of what Rick said. The thing is that Rob Ryan has done a great job. The 3 safeties, they need 3 safeties and 3 good safeties. That is not much drop off. The thing about Bush is he's valuable in special teams, and that's where he really cut his teeth on special teams. Did a great job when the lights were on special teams as a safety, and quality minutes, gave him quality minutes. He's more than a guy who tackles. He covers well, and he's a very intelligent guy. And kind of what Rick said too. Robert, he grasped that defense very well and digest what they're giving him. So, you won't see the same error twice in a row. I think the Ball guy is a little bit of a box guy. He's a guy that tackles well in the box, a little size to him. But in Canada, he was like a monster guy, in that box and covers well. Covers that area very, very well. So they would lose a lot if Bush. What's valuable to them may not be as valuable to someone else. But I think Atlanta has ulterior motives. I think they could use them, but they're trying to pull something away and weaken their opponent.
I agree. I think they're going to try to weaken the Saints with that. Also, I thought that Bush, as he kind of emerged in the defensive backfield, was a tone setter, a very physical player. You saw that again, he would lay a lick on you, pretty sure tackler, and a guy that honestly, when was kind of a cast-off from Denver, a guy that's come in and fit very, very well for this team. And I think he's going to be a huge loss if ultimately they don't re-sign him. I'm sure they have a number that they have in mind on what they would like to be able to pay him. The question is if that number that's floating out there right now of $2.2 million is what the Falcons are signing him to that offer sheet, if that's what the Saints think that again, he's worth. I think, looking at it from the outside, looking in, I think he's worth it, but do the Saints believe he's worth it?
Right, and because they're going to set a number and they're going to stick to that number. That's been their history. And you're exactly right. In free agency, a player leaving weakens a team more than he helps the team that he's going to. You could kind of almost chisel that one in stone. So Atlanta would wind up with a player that can help them as a player, but would weaken a division opponent, and that's going to be necessary for them to be successful.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's talk about Marcus Ball. Again, a guy that went to Florida State for a couple years, then transferred to Memphis, really played linebacker in most of his career, went up kind of washed out in the NFL real early, went up to Canada, and has played pretty well. He's been a pretty good player in Canada. Saints have had some success, at least going up there and finding prospects. Chris Williams was a guy they brought in at midseason, kick returner, punt returner. They put him on the practice squad. He was a receiver guy, a receiver also up in Canada. He was taken off the practice squad. I believe it was by the Chicago Bears, but don't quote me on that one. But now they go up and get Marcus Ball. Again, guys, where do you think he fits? Is this a guy that is? I think he's the classic tweener, but will he fit what the Saints are trying to do with their defense?
Saints can use tweeners. That's what makes them somewhat unique. Their nickel and dime safeties, the nickel and dime corners, the slot corners, are sort of linebackers. Roman Harper, except for his ball skills, which were lacking, but it shows how good a job they did that Rob Ryan did. They got a lot of mileage out of Roman Harper last year, even though he was spatially challenged. They can use a player that's like that. That's sort of a linebacker, sort of a safety. So they do a great job, and what they do as a staff extremely well. They evaluate players, they put them in positions that they can handle, and don't let them do stuff they can't do.
By the way, they signed Marcus Ball to a three-year deal. Your thoughts, Renee?
Interesting conversation I had with Thomas Morstead about a week ago in the gym after working out, and he was telling me, of course, that he watches all those moves the Saints make because when the moves they make sometimes are guys that affect special teams, and it affects his punting and things like that. I don't affect his punting, but how his special team's going to be. So there's guys that he kind of holds his breath and hopes that they can stick around and things like that. So the special teams is such a valuable part of the team. Don't undersell a guy just because he may not be a starter. I mean, so many guys have made tremendous careers, and I was talking to him quite a bit, and he was mentioning about guys that they lost that may change the scheme of things on the special teams, on punting and things like that, and kick return.
Yes. When you look at the other big, at least visit this week, Champ Bailey. I mentioned on the radio show that, if you'd have told me 2 years ago you were getting Champ Bailey, I would have been excited. If you'd have told me 10 years ago that Champ Bailey was coming to town, I'd have been ecstatic.
Sure.
I've watched a lot of Denver games this year. He's lost not one step, but a couple steps. Not the same player that he once was. Interesting that you mentioned, Rick, that you believe that if he does sign with the Saints, he's signing as a safety, not as a corner.
Right.
If you would elaborate on that.
Right. Well, he only played, I believe, in 5 games last year because of injury. And if you remember, his last game the year before against the Ravens really got drubbed. His skill set, 16 years in the league, his skill set has eroded as a corner, and you've got to really be a great athlete to play corner in the NFL. And he said after the Super Bowl that he would be interested in moving to safety. As Woodson has, who's now, I believe, with Oakland. That's a natural progression for them because now the eroding skill set at corner works in very well at the safety position. You don't have to cover the safety that he would be playing. You don't have to cover the territory, but you've got somebody who's physical enough and smart enough and also has ball skills enough, because the other thing the Saints are working very hard on, they're looking for playmakers and people who could turn the ball over on defense. That's the one thing they didn't do last year while they went out and got a Jairus Byrd, for example, and let some of the other guys go who are a step behind. We're in the right place doing the right things, but they're a step behind, stopping the opposition from scoring but not forcing enough turnovers. When you look at Champ Bailey at a slot corner, he's a turnover maker.
Yeah.
The thing is, ball skills. You can't undersell ball skills. And I'm going to go back a little old school, and guy that you both remember very well, probably ran a 4.65 40 was Everson Walls. But he had great ball skills,
yes.
and he knew, when to make a great break on the ball or the flight of the ball and things like that. And it's all about timing. And Champ Bailey, you cannot replace his experience. Maybe he can't move as fast as he once could, but he knows what's going on, and he can certainly direct things back there as a safety. And he'll be a mini coach on the field with the 15 years experience he has, and again, the experience and things he's seen, and that's invaluable.
It's interesting when you guys talk about the move from corner to safety in the twilight of your career. I remember a former Saint, was it Dave Waymer? Left the Saints as a corner, went to San Francisco, and had a pretty decent back end of his career playing the safety position. So we've seen that throughout the NFL. Players that have played the corner position ultimately go into the safety position. The question is, again, when a player leaves after visiting and he doesn't come out with a contract, that normally signals that they're pretty far apart in terms of what he believes he's worth and what the Saints believe he's worth. Guys, I'll put you on the spot. When they open the season, is Champ Bailey part of this team?
I doubt it. I don't think that he's going to play anywhere for the league minimum. And his value right now throughout the league is the veteran minimum, which is 900-something thousand, I believe, right under $1 million. And that's tough for somebody of his stature to come back. But,
future Hall of Famer.
Yes, but he loves to play, and he doesn't mind the grind. So that's something that's a positive. If you're not tired of the grind and you want to work, but he's got some decision making to make about whether he wants to play for the league minimum. Could help us. Would be a good hand to have there. Would certainly be an upgrade from Malcolm Jenkins and his ball skills. Roman Harper and his ball skills would be an upgrade from that. As a position he talked about playing at the end of the year, will he play for league minimum?
I think his initial reaction will be, no, I'm not going to play for league minimum. But once he starts considering that I can squeeze a little more tube out of the toothpaste, and I can get one more year, and is this a team that can make it all the way? A Rob Ryan type defense, he would fit in well there. Initially he'll say, no, I'm not going to play for that. But one more year, 2 more years, whatever he thinks he's got in the tank left, this may be a good fit for him. And I think there's 2 or 3 teams in the league, and the Saints are one of them, with Rob Ryan type defense that would be a really good fit for Champ Bailey. I think it's going to be a long process, a long decision-making process before he decides. But I think he'll play next year somewhere.
Right. We were getting ready to go to the phone lines at 504-866-3200. I will say this as we move on to the phone lines. The Saints are in a good position. They're one of about a handful of teams that if you're an aging veteran, you're trying to be able to catch that one chance at a Super Bowl win, that they're going to get a look-see from a lot of those guys, especially as we get through the draft and you get a little closer to training camp. So wouldn't be surprised to get a look-see from some other veterans as well. Would you guys agree with that?
Oh yeah. And I mean, the thing is that the Saints know that the window, and I know they get tired of hearing it. I get tired of talking about it. The window of opportunity is closing, but it is true.
Yeah.
And the thing is that you know how many more years, as long as number 9 is standing up, and they've always said that they have a chance. I don't know how many more years he'll be as sturdy and strong as he is now, as talented as he is now. But as long as number 9 is in the backfield, you have a shot. And again, that window is closing.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, each and every Thursday night, live here right on WLAE TV. Also on Friday nights, a rebroadcast, 10 o'clock on WLAE TV and Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. Our guest tonight, Rick Gailey of SportsNola.com and WGSO Radio, and of course Renee Nato of SportsNola.com and also Fox Sports New Orleans. To the phone lines we go to Ryan in Mid-City. Welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for the call.
How you doing, Eric?
Hey, Ryan.
I'd like to say hello to your guests, but I also would like to say, I know we're talking about defense right now, but I think it was a horrendous move to let Darren Sproles go. I think our offense was our weak point when we go to other places and play. And I just can't believe the Saints will make a move to get rid of Sproles, somebody that was so versatile and helping a aging quarterback. And I got one more thing to say. I think every time we get cornerbacks and safeties, besides Keenan Lewis, they're always playing a step behind. I mean, just like Jabari Grill let the guy from the Patriots catch a corner, end zone touchdown. I just think, every time we get cornerbacks and safeties, they're all, except Keenan Lewis, I think we need to look within. I think we need to look within the state. We got to look within the guys that play for LSU, Tulane, Louisiana Tech, because it just seems like we just can't get safeties and corners that's good. You know what I'm saying? And I just hang on and let y'all talk.
Ryan, thank you for the phone call. Certainly appreciate it. Let's take Darren Sproles first. Guys, it kind of was it was a money issue more than anything else, and the fact that his skills were diminishing. He's not he's going to be in a perfect situation in Philadelphia. I'm sure he's going to have a pretty good season, but this was something that obviously, I've said on this show a couple times, it's like Bill Parcells. Get rid of him, and also the guy up in New England. Get rid of him a year early than a year late. Renee, let's take you first.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, it's a cost-cutting measure. They needed the money desperately, but I think a year from now, you're not getting anything for him. And they did get a 5th-round pick for him. I know maybe looking at it now, you could have, we should have got a little bit more. But a year from now, you wouldn't have anything for him. And I think Darren Sproles, this year, you didn't see it. He wasn't as effective as he was a year ago. And I think the staff kind of viewed him as he's starting on a decline a little bit. Now, he's not a bad player, but he wasn't a player he was a year or two ago.
You were able to take the money you were going to spend on Darren Sproles and bring in Jairus Byrd with that money. I mean, basically, what you were going to pay him this year, you're going to pay Jairus Byrd that money. So again, it's almost a little bit of a trade-off. Rick, what's your take on that?
Right, they got a 5th-round pick for Darren when they didn't have to give up anything. Remember, they signed him as a free agent from San Diego. I wrote about this in Sports NOLA. Over the last 2 years, his production has declined almost 50%. That 2 years ago, he set an NFL record for total yards. And not only in his rushing yards has gone down, but his receiving yards as well. Pierre Thomas caught more passes last year. Hard to believe, 77 to 71. Right. Still highly effective. Sure. Darren Sproles is still an effective player in a world-class situation as the NFL is, but he's declined, especially in the return game. And so I first heard about the get rid of them a year too soon rather than a year too late from Bill Walsh way back in the day, and went back and studied that. So was not the end of the road for Darren, and at the end of the road may still be. He's going to be effective in Philadelphia, but it was time for the Saints to move on while they could still get something for him.
What about the cornerback and safety situation? I'm of the opinion that this is the way it's shaping up, 3 of the 4 right now, this is probably the best defensive backfield they had in a long time for this team. Rick?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, because 3 of the 4 positions are absolutely set. And depending on how Patrick Robinson comes back and whether Corey White has established himself at the other corner position, Corey White's got some, I call it, execution discipline, some fundamental discipline, errors. His eyes get in the backfield at the wrong time, and he isn't always fundamentally sound in what he's doing. But he competes and plays really, really fast at that position. So I feel pretty good about those 4 in the Saints secondary. Get those slot corners, nickel corners, nickel safeties, and dime safeties situated. But Ryan was exactly right, because one of the things that Sean Payton has done historically is draft defensive backs in the first round, 3 of them, as a matter of fact. And not all of them have worked out to be real first-round draft choices like we would think of as a first round. Because when you draft somebody in the first round, that guy's got to come in and be a contributor immediately. But I think maybe they've done a better job diagnosing available talent and getting people who can play the game in those places.
Your thoughts on both subjects?
Sean Payton is a home run hitter, and home run hitters, they never get tired of swinging. They keep swinging to the fence. And he's going to go for a cornerback in the first 3 rounds, maybe the first 2 rounds. There's no doubt about it. And he may even do it in the first round. But they want to make sure that it's solid, it's competitive. Guys get hurt. You don't know what Patrick Robinson's going to come back, and you don't know about Corey White, how well he's going to do. So you bring in a high draft choice as a cornerback, and I guarantee Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis going for the fences when the draft comes around, but their defensive backfield is on solid footing, and they know very, very well. Rob Ryan and the whole coaching staff defensively know what they have and know how good they can be.
Guys, what about targeting local players, going after the LSU, the Tulane graduates, the guys from UNLV? They're building a dynamite program over there in Lafayette right now. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's not the USFL where you could go territorial and you could keep all the players here. I know sometimes there are some folks out there would like to see that, but that's not part of the NFL.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I've been saying this for years, and I do studies on this every year. As far back as I can remember, and Rick knows this very well. On the average, every year in August, I check the rosters of all the NFL teams. And on a minimum, there's 34 to 35 guys who played high school football in the New Orleans and surrounding area on rosters on the NFL. This past year, there were 44 players who played high school football. I'm talking about the River Parishes, North Shore, and New Orleans on NFL rosters. Wow. That's unbelievable. Now, they don't all make the team. Sometimes they developmental injury reserve and things like that. The talent in this area, 34 to 40 players every year on NFL rosters. So you got more than the Mannings and guys like that, Ed Reeds. There's a lot of great players. The whole state of Louisiana produces about 100 to 105 players. 40 of those come from New Orleans.
Where's that per capita in the nation?
Oh,
that's
my goodness.
It's first by far.
Got to be number one, right?
It's got to be number one. And I'll give a quick shout out. You know what team with school? St. Augustine has produced 44 players through the history of school have gone into the NFL. That ranks them about 4th or 5th in the entire country all time. And that's including Texas, California. St. Aug has produced 44 players that have gone to the NFL through the history of school. I think it's amazing.
Before we go to Raymond and Algiers, guys, you guys cover a lot of high school football. Rick, you're a former high school coach. It really comes down to the type of training that these kids are getting at the high school level. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, during the Super Bowl, a year and a half ago, had a reporter from New York come down and interview me about why so many players in the NFL come from Louisiana. And to me, it's very simple. It's important. It matters to us here. Coaches, and we're very fortunate for this, coaches can make a living coaching in Louisiana. It's not a hobby. It's not a sideline. It's what they do in teaching. Is not only classroom teach, which you have to do in Louisiana predominantly, but also in teaching their sports. And so sports do well in Louisiana, and especially football. Football is important. It's important to their community. It's important to the graduates of those schools. But it's important to the coaches as well, because we can make a living out of coaching high school sports in Louisiana. And in this country, that's not always the most important thing.
Renee, your take, you've been around high school football in this state for a long, long time, reporting on it. Your thoughts?
You know, I tip of the hat again to guys like Rick, the coaches, because it's not only the quality of talent, it's they refine the talent and make them better and help them get to the next level. So players here are hungry. Maybe it's the culture here, but it means something, and players just hit the ground walking and carrying a football. They're ready to play, and it's important to them, and there's a lot of pride in that. But you know, I have a chance to travel around the country, and it'd be hard pressed. I've seen high school football all over the country. Be hard pressed to match top to bottom what we have right here.
To Raymond in Algiers. Raymond, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for calling tonight.
All right.
Hey, Raymond, how are you?
I'm fine. I want to say I think all the moves the Saints have made so far has been great. Darren Sproles, I think, has just became one of the casualties because the other teams have kind of figured out when he's in the game what the Saints is going to do. My problem is I love everything that they've done on defense, but I'm not sold on Mark Ingram. To me, Tyrese Cadet and the other guy, Kirby Robinson, is probably our two best running backs. And I think Mark Ingram, when he's in a game, he's not a threat to make anybody fearful of him. I think the Saints should have tried to trade him or see what they could have got from him, even though they traded down the #1 draft pick to get him. I want to know what you guys think about that. I'm just not sold on Mark Ingram.
Raymond, thank you for the phone call. Renee, let's go with you first on that. You know, I guess if there was a market for Mark Ingram, maybe Mark Ingram might have been on the trading block, but your thoughts on Ingram, how he's done so far, and what you expect out of him this season?
You guys might disagree, but third or fourth round was all they'd have gotten for him. I think that's all he would have gotten with a third or fourth round offer. You did see a fire lit under him towards the end of end of 2013, and maybe it's a shade of what he could be. But the fact of the matter is, Sean Payton likes him, and as long as he likes him, he's going to be there, and he sees potential. So I think Mark Ingram's going to get a lot of opportunities in spring and preseason to see if he can be the guy, and maybe this year will be. A light will come on, and you'll see a different Mark Ingram. But you did see some flashes towards the end of last year.
Coach, your thoughts?
Yeah, Raymond has some concerns that we all do.
Yes.
But it was, and Renee hit on it, that at the end of the year in the playoffs, he started running with attitude. The last two regular season games and the two playoff games really started to run with a type of attitude that became somewhat infectious. And the Saints are going more and more to that power running game. They had a transformation last year when Sean Payton came back from his enforced sabbatical. They were trying early in the year to become more of a zone blocking type of team, and that didn't fit in all that well. He's predominantly been in the running game, a power, downhill running type of coach. His background comes from Sid Gilman and Air Coryell, and even North Turner is part of that tree, and that's all power running game and drop back passing. And so if he runs with that attitude, and the Saints are certainly going to go with a power running game. And an interesting statistic when it comes to a power running game. In the playoffs, the two playoff games, the Saints were #1 in the league at running the ball to the right side behind Zach Strief at right tackle, off tackle to the right, and outside to the right. #1 in the league at attempts in those two areas. I think the Saints are going to really emphasize that. And as long as Ingram is healthy and runs with attitude, he's going to be a contributor. It would have been great, really, if he could have gotten a third or fourth round. I'm not certain if they could have really gotten anything, because who's trading for running backs?
What I'm saying is at the best,
Right.
it would have been third or fourth at best. And you're talking about a guy to get traded for to get into #1.
Yes.
But I don't think he's much value.
Well, guys, I'm of the opinion that Kyrie Robinson is going to have every opportunity to be the bell cow running back on this team. That we may see Pierre Thomas again. I think is going to play a big part. Ingram will get his shot, but. I just got a feeling that he's going to be the guy they're going to look to early and see if he can be that every down back for him. I am also convinced, and we'll talk about this a little later on the program, that they're going to go out and find that Darren Sproles, Reggie Bush clone. They're going to find a guy like that in the draft that they can bring in, because I don't think they want to lose that dimension in their offense.
Oh, I think so, very much so, as a matter of fact. In fact, my #1 priority for the Saints is to find an explosive player on offense. Because the one thing they don't have, yes, they need help at corner, perhaps offensive line, linebacker, but what they don't have is an explosive player offensively. Stills has some speed, downfield speed. Joe Morgan, we hope so. But they don't have a player on the team, and this is where Darren Sproles even had some difficulty. They don't have a player on the team they could throw the ball to them 5 yards down the field and he could take it to the house. They need a player that they could throw it over the top or throw a short one, make an explosive play out of it. The Saints don't have that, and I think that's a huge priority, and I think that's what you're alluding to.
Right. Can you say Odell Beckham?
Well,
but I just don't think he's going to be there.
No, but I tell you what, I think what's going to Odell Beckham also as a return specialist is going to make him very, very valuable.
I agree
and he's a hard-working guy.
Well, you fill 3 spots with him if you're the Saints. You fill that Sproles-Bush role. You got him as a wide receiver, and you really say 4 because then he becomes your kick and punt returner as well.
He's a great kid.
I coached against him. I have to see his back a good bit when I was at St. James.
You know.
Playing against Newman. And something with Odell, he's not finished physically developing yet. He's young. They're all young. But males don't finish their development till they're 23 to 25 years old, depending on the individual. And he's got at least 2 more years, if not 3, of physical development and growth. Not only mental maturity, but especially physical maturity. Because if you look at the transformation when he came out of Newman and to where he is right now, he doesn't look like the same person.
How about Kyrie Robinson? What do you think his upside is for this team next year?
The thing is about Kyrie Robinson, and I bet you Rick agrees with me. You know, the thing about, you've had guys like Chris Ivory coming from Tiffin College and these small schools. What a big jump from Division II and Division III to the NFL. And these guys are coming in here, Kyrie Robinson and Chris Ivory and the Travaris Cadet. And the game is so fast, and sometimes it's the mental portion that is the biggest challenge for these guys. It doesn't mean they're stupid, but the game where they're played in the NFL, it's the biggest jump from the SEC or the Pac-12 right to the NFL. But now you're going from Division II to Division III, so the game is speeded up a little bit. Where the blocking is going to be.
Blitz pickup?
Yeah, blitz pickup, things like that. And you cannot trust a guy out there as a rookie if he doesn't know who to block and where to go, where to run. So sometimes you see a big jump from their rookie year to their second year, and you may see a big jump in Kyrie Robinson because of that.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE TV, with a rebroadcast on Friday nights at 10 o'clock on WLAE TV and also on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. Got a great panel for you tonight. Renee Nato of Fox Sports New Orleans, and Rick, brain fart here.
Hey, Coach.
Hey, I'm just going to go, hey, Coach. Rick Galeyev also with us as well. We are going to take a quick break. We'll come back. Again, you're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is literally saving kids' lives.
It's a very special place, friendly place.
To see the kids that they're helping on a daily basis was unbelievable.
Families never receive a bill from St. Jude.
Discoveries made at St. Jude are freely shared.
The hardest cancer cases in the world go to St. Jude. We won't stop until no child dies from cancer.
Join us.
Join us
in supporting Hoops for St. Jude.
Visit stjude.org/hoops to find out how.
We can beat this. The spill in the Gulf, it's a catastrophe.
But we will solve it.
This is not a Gulf Coast issue.
This is a national problem that requires a national solution.
But what can you do to help?
What do you have to offer? Your voice.
Speak up.
Add your name to the petition
demanding restoration and protection
of America's Gulf Coast.
Sign it.
Share it.
Be the one.
Be the one. RestoreTheGulf.com.
Inside New Orleans Sports, I'm your host, Eric Asher. Rick Galley is with us, along with Renee Nato. As we move forward and talk a little Saints, 866-3200. 866-3200 is the phone number. Guys, Jimmy Graham, what do you think is going to happen there? They're talking about, at least there have been some reports out there, that the Saints will sign him before the April 26th grievance period hearing happens. Rick, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. It's better for everybody, not just the Saints, but Jimmy Graham. It's good for him as well. Graham and Peyton and Breeze are better together than they are separately. It's a classic case of 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to greater than 3. So it behooves all involved for them to work it out.
Now, he's already counting $7 million against the cap. Renee, what do you think is going to happen here?
He'll sign, and he'll be signed as a tight end because they can. And I know, a lot of fans want to give him a little bit more, and he deserves money and wide receiving stuff. The way the cap is, you don't want to throw money around if you don't have to. And boy, I tell you what, that saving $2 or $3 or $5 million, that could go for something else. So he'll sign as a tight end, and everything will be forgiven and forgotten. And he'll sign a long-term deal, and with that bonus up front, it will all work itself out.
And again, they need that more than anything else. They'd like to be able to reduce that $7 million number if they can going into the season, so they don't have to renegotiate any more deals. Looking at the last dead money that I was looking at, they don't have a lot of dead money going into next season.
Right.
They just don't. A lot of that dead money's happened this year. So I think they'd like to get into next season if they can without having a tremendous amount of dead money. Mm-hmm. And they've done a pretty good job of it so far.
They've really done a masterful job handling the cap. I think they've shoved the right amount of money forward from the new contracts that they've come up with, because you're going to look at a very rapid growth in the salary cap as we go forward. The first 2 years of the last collective bargaining agreement was very owner-friendly, that the cap in fact, may have regressed a bit during that time. But now it's gone up this year, and the projections going forward is for a rapid growth of the salary cap. And so pushing those dollars forward is going to work out very well with the explosion in the salary cap.
The salary cap is going to go up, but so will the salaries.
Yes.
So you got to watch. Sooner or later, you got to pay the piper. The thing is that you're going to push it, and it's going to come up, 3-5 years, whatever it may be. But sooner or later, you have to pay for that. And yes, the salary cap will go up, but so will everybody's salary.
Guys, I think that Mickey Loomis has looked at this, and he realizes, and I think this is almost by design, he realizes what the NFL contract is going to be with the players. He knows the TV money that's coming in. He understands about where the salary cap will be year to year. And I think he's looking at contracts, and he's formulating those contracts, understanding that, again, okay, it's going to, next year will explode in terms of money. Well, next year is when Drew Brees' contract balloons. So I think I think they've done that by design. And again, I've said it before in this program on the radio show. I think he's the best in the NFL, and when it comes to cap management. I don't think, again, they're always right up against the cap, but they always have the ability to go out and still get quality players on this team in the offseason.
They do, and he does a great job. I mean, evidenced by this past year, Jairus Byrd. Where did he come up with that money from?
Who would have? I'm going to get that. Right. Who would have believed that he would have signed here with the cap constraints that the Saints had?
And he did a great job, and Mickey does a great job with that. And they know far in advance what they have to work with and where they can move things around. And it's a shell game. They can move things around and fool people. But he does a masterful job at contracts.
Right. Championship teams don't just happen on the field. In fact, in coaching, 80% of coaching is not between the lines. It's outside the lines. And management in the NFL today especially is huge. That's the difference between championship teams and also Rams. That's why how many teams do we look at year after year after year are mediocre or worse, and how many teams are good year after year after year? It's because of great management.
504-866-3200. Got a great panel for you tonight. Renee Nato of Fox Sports New Orleans. Rick Gailey of WGSO Radio and SportsNola.com. To Charlie in Picayune, Mississippi. Charlie, thanks for calling from Mississippi. Appreciate the call.
Yes, sir. Eric, gentlemen, I don't know how the rules have changed, but I'd like to know what are the Saints are going to do about a place kicker?
Rick, you want to take that first?
Well, they signed Shane Graham, so he's back for this year, and I'm sure they'll bring another kicker in. One thing about kickers in the NFL, NFL certainly does mean not for long when it comes to kickers. And guess what? Every position in the NFL is short term. The door is always closing for the players, and all you got to do is show up on the players' off day on Tuesday and see how many players they're auditioning every week during every week of the season. So Shane Graham is starting out and going into training camp as the kicker. Maybe he's found a home, because the one thing he just has not been tremendously consistent over his his career, and we saw glimpses of that. Great against Philadelphia, and then some errors against Seattle at Seattle. But there'll be another kicker or two brought in to challenge him for the final job.
I was going to ask also, Renee, your thoughts on Graham, but also, is it out the realm of possibility that they maybe draft a kicker or maybe go to undrafted free agency and get a kicker to challenge?
This won't be the last you see of Garrett Hartley, I'll tell you that.
You think he may come back?
I would be surprised if he doesn't.
Wow.
I really do think that. I just really think Garrett Hartley, you'll see him before later than later. But I think they'll bring some guys in. There's some great kickers in college football. And I think they'll audition a few, bring up a couple to camp, and again, you know, after the draft, if a guy's not picked, right. You know, they'll bring somebody in and let him audition. But you know, they got a lot of Morstead. I mean, look at they got with him a draft, a 6th round, and the thing is that punter and place kicker. He's not a field goal guy, but the thing is what value he is to the team.
No, there's no doubt. To California. And Larry, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for calling from the Golden State.
Yes, from the Golden State. Welcome. Hey, I just want to know what you guys are going to do about the loss of Darren Sproles. This is coming from the New Orleans fan base from California.
Larry, thanks for the phone call. Why don't you leave Larry on the line so you can hear what we have to say? Go ahead, Rick. You take it first. Your thoughts on Darren Sproles?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have a very successful year. In Philadelphia. Not up to the standards really that he had here, I don't believe, because he's declining, and he's a speed and quickness type of person. Certainly in the return game will not be a tremendous factor, but he's going to be successful at Philadelphia, especially since they've moved on from Deshaun Jackson. That plays right into Darren Sproles' wheelhouse, so to speak. It was probably time for the amount of money that he was making here in New Orleans. It was time to go ahead and move on and try to make some progress from there. But Darren's going to have a good year with Philadelphia.
Yeah. Renee, I would agree with that. And the fact that they signed him to a 2-year deal tells you that they're not trying to do one and done with him. And also, I agree with you, Rick. I think it hastened the move of Deshaun Jackson being cut by the Eagles. What are your thoughts?
Chip Kelly knows what he's doing, and Darren Sproles is going to fit that offense very well. You know, Chip Kelly with the high-speed offense in Oregon. Very potent offense, and I think he's going to use him. He sees something for him. He'll use his skills to realize that he may not be the player he was 2 years, 3 years ago, but there's some value there, and he's going to get everything he can out of him for the next 2 years. And I think you'll see a good player for the Eagles.
Larry, thanks for the call from California. There's some glaring spots right now where the Saints have not filled. The first one, let's talk about on the offensive side of the ball, is the center position. Brian De La Puente has shopped his wares. There's been no takers at this point. His last visit was to the Washington Redskins. I think he walked away without a deal. Charles Brown signs with the New York Giants this week. There's been a lot of talk that Tim Lelito may be the heir apparent there. Been a lot of talk that maybe Jonathan Goodwin is that stopgap guy. Maybe he's the 1-year stopgap while Lelito still learns the system. Maybe he's that emergency guy, that veteran guy in case Lelito can't handle what's going on if he becomes the starting center. Renee, let's take you first. Your thoughts on Lelito? Is he ready? Is he a guy that ultimately will be the center for this team, or do you think that they will either re-sign De La Puente or go out and get a veteran?
Him and I had some conversations about Tim Lelito. Rick and I watched practice 2 days last year, and somebody put a bug in my ear about Lelito, and I came and told him, I said, let's watch this guy. And talked to somebody on the coaching staff, and we watched him, and I remember he bombed in one of the games. It was the Cardinals this year?
Yeah, it was his first game.
Yeah, and stuff, and I said, but I tell you something I like about it, and I told what the coaches shared with me and all, and I think Rick watched him a lot closer, but they like the guy, and he's 6'4", 315, seems to be a fighter, a battler. Don't know if he can translate to center, but they do see some skills there. Wouldn't be shocked to see him draft a center. But I think Lelito is going to get the first shot, and they have a pretty good idea. They know right now if they think he can do it, but they'll certainly bring somebody and compete with him. But I think he's right now, he's a favorite.
Yeah, because that's a critical position for the Saints, the center and the 2 guard positions. And Brian De La Puente has been a very solid player for them, but his skill set is really kind of as a backup, really, more than as a starter. He's just not strong enough. He's got the requisite size. He's over 300 pounds, but he's just not physical enough to stay in there with the two guards, and that part of the pocket has got to be solid. In fact, I think some of the problems that the Saints had early in the year that looked like it was guard problems were probably De La Puente type problems. But once again, he's just a good, solid NFL player, but the Saints need something better than that. It's going to be difficult going into the season, just turning the job over to Lolito physically, and he's going to be able to get it done. It's just really difficult to go into the season with a second-year player and say, okay, you're it. You're changing positions, you're it. It's an important position. Goodwin could be an important part of this equation. I don't think that the Saints don't have to be in any rush right now because there's nobody going anywhere as far as offensive centers are concerned. So they're going to take some time and have Tim Lolito. They hope that he's able to do it, but they're going to have an adequate person that if he's a little short to be able to go to.
Well, Coach, and I will say this, that I think he's going to have a leg up on anybody that comes in. He's going to be obviously the center for the offseason workouts. For mini camp up to this point, it looks like he'll be the starting center there. So he's going to have every opportunity to be able to get the job. The question is he ready for the job?
Right. Well, the thing is, it would be a good idea to bring a Goodwin in, but some guy, I've seen some mock drafts with Brian Stark, who I like a lot from Florida State. He is a very, very good center, and depending where he would fall in the draft, could be a fourth round, fifth round kind of guy maybe, and that could be a spot that they could look.
Well, that's where the Saints usually strike gold with these offensive linemen.
Indeed.
I mean, that's where they really go after them. Let's go to James in Franklinton. James, thanks for calling Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, Eric. Hi, guys. Again, the best show on TV as far as sports is concerned. I'm wondering who the Saints are probably going to go ahead and draft an offensive fire plug first. That'll probably be their first pick. They're going to get somebody that can bust the game open on the offensive side, saying that we don't have anybody. Who do you guys think that will be? And do you think that is going to be the first pick or even the second pick? And I'll hang up and listen.
Coach, I want to take you first on that one.
Wow, it's picking 27th. It's hard to
really
figure who's going to be there. I mean, I would love for the Saints to move up enough to draft Sammy Watkins, because that's the kind of player that they need is a Sammy Watkins. I'm looking for them much later in the draft, third, fourth round or so, somebody like a DeAnthony Thomas. Because as much as I would like an explosive type receiver in the first round, one of the other MOs of Sean Payton is that he doesn't draft anybody under 6'2". And so many of those explosive players are shorter than that. It all comes down to value and who's available and when they want to do it, because you certainly don't want to take a second-round draft choice and draft him in the first round, or a third round and draft him in the second round. Mike Ditka did enough of that. Drafted people way too soon. So the term value keeps coming up, that you want to draft people in the right places. Even somebody later on, if Jeremy Hill is there, because think about the explosiveness that he's demonstrated. Not a first round, not a second round draft choice, but third, fourth, if he falls down into that area, suddenly becomes more valuable. But I think the Saints, because of what they've done, getting Zach Strief back was certainly important to this. Jairus Byrd, having him in the secondary, are certainly in a position at 27th to take the best player available, because somebody in the first 26 picks is going to fall to them that nobody could have possibly predicted.
Renee?
Might surprise you, but if there's a time that they would trade down, this might be it. The thing is, there's not a lot of difference between the 27th pick and early second.
Yes.
And if you can move down, you got to get a taker. If you can move down and pick up an extra draft choice or two, wow, can you imagine if you picked up another second-round draft choice or a third?
Right.
The value they have there, and you'd rather have maybe a second or third than that number one if you're just moving out of that. And that would have to be ideal. You'd have to get a buyer, but...
Well, especially with the depth at corner and wide receiver, which are two positions that you really need an influx of talent. And if you were able to do that, and I would agree with you, Renee, I think there's a good possibility, more than maybe the Saints moving up to get a player, moving back and trying to pick up extra choices, because there is a plethora of players at a position of need for them. Offensive linemen, as you mentioned, in the middle rounds, where, again, there's a lot of offensive linemen that the Saints could utilize. Wide receiver, and of course, corner. I think those are the three positions of real need. James, thank you for the phone call, by the way. Guys, what do you think the positions of need? Would you agree those are the three main positions?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. You never have too many corners. You never have too many tackles. Linebacker, especially outside linebacker, is certainly an area of concern. And as we've mentioned, an explosive offensive player. Those are all positions. When I say an explosive player, that explosive player may be on defense, as a matter of fact. But those are certainly positions that are important.
You know who's going to be treated as a draft choice this year? Victor Butler.
Yes.
Hasn't made his debut yet. Very young player, 2-3 years in Dallas. So they can't wait for him, and he'll be like a rookie here. And that's going to be a tremendous upgrade, because he's coming here with a couple of years' experience in Dallas, and he knows that Rob Ryan system. And
he's in a contract year.
Yes.
He signed a 2-year deal.
Exactly.
And this is a contract year, so he was hoping to make that splash last year to be able to parlay that into a big contract. He's hoping to be able to do that this season.
People notice that in the NFL?
Oh, you know they do. You know they do. Eric Lorig, what does it signal, Eric Lorig coming to this team? Again, we talked a little bit about in the first segment of the program, the fact that Bush now has been offered an offer sheet by the Atlanta Falcons, and Raphael Bush now may be a Falcon. The Saints have until Tuesday to be able to match that offer, or he will become an Atlanta Falcons. The Saints did the same thing to Tampa Bay. They went out there and grabbed their fullback to weaken them. What does the addition of Lorig mean for this team?
Eric Lorig is a very interesting young man. Bigger, stronger, looking at power running attack that the Saints want to be able to emphasize. But he grew up as a defensive player at Stanford. He played defensive end, was drafted as a defensive player. And I went back and looked at tape of him from last year to see what kind of player that he was. He brings a defensive mentality to the offensive side of the ball. His problem playing defense is that he couldn't get off of blocks. Well, guess what? If you're a blocker, that's what you want to do. You want to stay stuck on people. That's one of the things in coaching we would do. If we had a defensive player who couldn't get off of blocks, we'd move him to offense, because he had a tendency to stick on people. Helps in the power running game. Has never been handed the ball one time in pro football, so he's not going to be a running threat unless they develop that, but an excellent pass receiver, a big, powerful guy with an attitude, who is a great special teams player. He played in 25% more special teams plays last year than the fullback we had last year.
He's bigger than they say. They say he's 250. He's about 275, 270. You get those big guys on the edge, it's like a bear on ice. You know, they're not the dancing type guys, but you get them on an ISO play between the tackles, they're going to blow somebody up. And Lorig is going to certainly upgrade that position as a blocker, and that's all you're looking for. I know Jed Collins was a guy who has a good pair of hands and things like that, and they gave him the ball inside on occasion, but you got running backs to do that.
Let's shift gears and talk a little Pelicans for the time that we have left in the program tonight. Pelicans 32-43 now, 7 games left in the season. And Renee, I'll start with you first. Your thoughts on this team winning 32 games with all the injuries they've had. Is this a successful season for this team?
If you look at the whole body of work, I'd have to say yes. Excuse me. Monty Williams has done a good job for what he's had to deal with and overcome injuries and guys not playing at 100% because of injuries. And I think he's done a good job. And even when you have everyone healthy, this is not an elite team. So he's gotten as much as he could out of this team. So Monty Williams has done a good job. The team is, you've seen him, they've grown quite a bit. Anthony Davis certainly is going to be, he'll get some consideration in the next couple of years. League MVP.
Yes.
And I think he'll lift the whole team up. But the thing is that right now, because you haven't had enough guys healthy long enough, you really don't know how good this team can be.
Yeah, I've had some questions during the course of the year, because the Pelicans did something that a lot of the other teams in the league didn't do. They took a shot this year. Other teams were dumping people in the preseason, and the Pelicans were trying to acquire people and become playoff contenders this year, and the injuries have probably kept them, even though in the West, good grief, you have to be 15 games over 500
really
to make it. They'd be a contender in the East for a playoff spot.
They'd be fighting for that 7th spot right now.
That's right, for what they've done. Going forward, and that's what I'm looking at the organization. I can't tell you what the Pelicans' philosophy is, and I'm disappointed in that. That's something that I study very hard, is what makes successful organizations. I can't tell you what their philosophy is. So that's something that is not clearly delineated. And to keep Anthony Davis, they better have a philosophy and they better get some players. They got 2 years to keep him here.
That's right.
And if they can't keep him here, then you could just fold it up.
Yep.
Because he's somebody that we've got to be able to retain. So going forward, being able to develop a philosophy, keep Anthony Davis here is going to be critical to the success of this organization. The other thing I've had some questions about, that Monty Williams, I think, can coach the game, can teach the skills of the game, has a sound footing in that. He has not done a great job evaluating personnel in this sense. Who do you play when? How much do you play? Yeah. Tyreke Evans, a classic example, misevaluated from the beginning, never should have been a sixth man. Shows you right from when he gets his opportunity, he needs to be a starter.
You know, Rick, I agree with you, and I think the biggest problem with Monty has been game time decisions within the flow of the game, and that's why I have been one that has said that they really need to go out and get an experienced guy in that number one chair. They got to get somebody next to Monty Williams who's been a head coach, who can counsel him, especially again with lineups, how things are going. He's still growing as a coach, and I think that's one of the things they have to look at. Also, Anthony Davis has made the comment that Monty is his coach, and that he wants to grow with Monty. So anybody that's thinking that Monty Williams is out of here, you can shut that down right now. Your thoughts, Renee?
The Pelicans could not afford to lose Anthony Davis, but I remember a couple of years ago, there was horror when they thought they'd lose Chris Paul, and they got by it. But this is a different owner, it's a different team, and I'm sure they're going to lock him up and make sure that they keep him happy. But it's right now, I don't know where the big splash is coming from for next year. Dell Demps, Monty Williams, if they both come back, and you have everybody who was injured coming back, are they still an elite team? I don't think so. So where's that splash coming from? Somehow, some way, they're going to have to move the checkers a little bit and get somebody in here to want the fans to want to come out and get tickets, because even though the tickets are sold, there's a lot of empty seats.
Yes.
And that's a lot of money that's not coming in the door, and they need to rectify the situation. But somehow, some way, it'll be a Mickey Loomis type deal, pull the money out of his hat. But they're going to have to make a big splash some way, somehow, with a change on this team.
They got quite a few free agents. They got, Eric Gordon, $30 million over the next 2 seasons. All they really have to play with right now is the mid-level exception. And then depending on what they're going to do with some of the guys that are out there, the free agents right now, whether they'll sign those guys back or not. But you're right, and I agree with you. They got to do something to really generate some interest in this fan base going forward. Anthony Davis should be enough. He's a superstar, the growth there, but I don't know if they're going to get it done.
Yeah, if you look at their roster, can anybody possibly say this is a potentially championship roster? No,
right.
You can't. You've got about half your roster who are real NBA players. Now, it's an upgrade from last year where they had about 2 NBA players on the whole roster. So now I think they've progressed to half. You've got to strengthen the roster all the way through the 12th person for them to have a chance to contend for a championship.
Guys, as always, really appreciate you guys coming down. And I say it each and every week because it's so true. It just goes by so fast. It really does. It really does. Thanks so much for tuning in. Again, remember there's a rebroadcast of this show each and every Friday night, 10 p.m. right here on WLAE TV and Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. You can catch me on the radio weekdays on WGSO, 990 a.m., 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. Also, you can check out the podcast for my radio show at ericasher.com. And if you missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, check those out at ericasher.com as well. Special thanks to our guests, Renee Nadeau of Fox Sports New Orleans, Rick Gailey of WGSO Radio and SportsNola.com. Also want to thank the WLAE production staff, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, my producer-director, William Hill. Want to appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, remember, make sure you tune in each and every Thursday night, 6 p.m. right here for Inside New Orleans Sports. Good evening, New Orleans.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natels Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.